Hi guys, Dan and Daisy here once again. This video we're going to be talking about 3 reasons why you should maybe reconsider moving to Wisconsin. There's probably a lot of videos out there talking about all the great things, and there really is. Lakes, the summers are amazing, there's so many things to do, the cost of living is a lot lower, but there really is 3 things that I pinpointed on reasons why you maybe will rethink moving to Wisconsin, and the 3 things you really should be at least aware of when you're moving to Wisconsin. Daisy, thanks for being the star of all the videos here. I know all of my subscribers here are really tuning in to watch Daisy, and she really is the star, so I'm giving her a bone as a reward for this. She needs to get paid too, right? Anyways, let's hop right into it, guys. Number 1 reason why you may reconsider, or the harsh reality of living in Wisconsin, or I'm sure you're aware of it, the winters. From about November to end of March, it's kind of brutal here living in Wisconsin. And I can tell you from experience, because I've literally never lived anywhere else besides Wisconsin. But I've traveled around enough to know that in other areas of the United States and the world, it remains a lot warmer and has much more mild climate throughout the year. Now, I will say that some people like the fact that throughout the year there is different climates, right? You really do have a solid guideline on when you go from winter to spring. I would say right around April time, like April 1st, it's pretty much springtime. I don't know the exact date that it's officially spring, but it feels like spring around that time. You get through that wet season, everything's melting down, you get through spring, the flowers start blooming, bam, all of a sudden you hit June, July, it's summertime, beautiful time. A lot of people spending a lot of times on the lakes, 4-wheeling, dirt biking, outside frothing, pretty much anything outdoors in Wisconsin in the summer is amazing. And then you get to fall time. For me, fall is actually my favorite time of the year and my least favorite time of the year, only because I know that winter is right around the corner, and that makes it my least favorite. Winter is brutal. You need to actually dress differently. I go through this weird little phase throughout the year where I live at least 2 weeks of winter in denial of the fact that it's super cold outside, and I walk outside probably like this in 5-degree weather and with no hats and gloves on and not without a jacket on. I'm freezing my ass off within 5-10 minutes of walking Daisy or whatever I'm doing outside, and I really regret it. Or even just getting into my vehicle. That's another thing to consider. The harsh winters are also harder on your vehicles as well. So there's a little bit. Oh, Jesus, Daisy, it scared me. There's a little bit more maintenance to do on vehicles, right? You need special snow tires. I just got my tires replaced on my truck. They were getting lower. They need to be replaced probably every 60 to 70,000 miles, like normal. But a snow tire is going to have a little bit better grip, and around the edges is going to have a little bit better traction on ice or slippery surfaces, especially when it's snowing. And one of the things that happens, especially the beginning or later part of winters, like in either November time or even December, actually, you have this weird temperature change in Wisconsin where you go from like 35 degrees down to like 25 degrees. And right around that 30, 32 degree temperature mark is when obviously water turns to ice. And that's scary because you ever heard of black ice? You can't tell it's actually ice until you're driving over it and you start going sideways on the road. And it is kind of freaky. So you want to have those special tires. When you get your oil change next time, just ask to see if those tires are good for winter tires. You can get a hybrid tire that works for winter and summer, which is what I do because I don't want to go to the shop every single time it's either spring or fall to change different seasons. Just get the hybrid tire that works for summer and the winter. But that is one of the biggest downsides that I hear when I work with people all the time that are either moving from Wisconsin or out of Wisconsin, and that's usually one of the biggest motivators or talking points that they have is when somebody's buying a house, they always ask me, they have like a checklist of things. Hey, can we, use our air conditioning, or what do we have to do for the air conditioning? What do we have to do for insulation? Do we have to board up our windows in the middle of winter? I'm telling you right now, it's not as crazy as you think, but there are some things that you need to consider, which is getting yourself some salt to put out in your front steps, because you will slip and fall if you don't have some salt or dirt or sand to put on your front steps. You're going to need to have a shovel or a snow blower. So that's one thing to consider when moving here and buying a house is, are you willing to upkeep the driveway if it's a longer or bigger driveway? So that's one thing to keep in mind. If it's a longer driveway, I've seen some long driveways out in like rural areas, like the countryside, where these driveways are like a quarter mile long or eighth mile long. And trust me, you're probably either going to want to have a skid steer that can plow the snow for you, or hire a local snow service, which is typically what I see people doing. Number 2 on the list for me for negative things about moving to Wisconsin is the lack of public transportation. And what I mean by that is Wisconsin's a pretty rural state when you go further north. So the further north you get, the more rural it is, the less densely populated it is, but also comes with the downside. You have less public transportation. There's not a bus system up there. There's not a train system up there. There's a lot of places that don't even have Ubers or taxis. I grew up in a town that, they never had an Uber, or they probably still don't to this day. They don't have taxi system. And even in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, where I live now, I remember back in the day there was not Ubers when a lot of other country did. Now, thankfully, there is Uber, Lyft, these different public services to transport you around. If that's important to you, then I would look into where you're moving to make sure that the transportation is going to fit your lifestyle and your expense needs that you prefer to stay within. Don't assume that wherever you move to is going to have some sort of transportation without using your own vehicle. It's not very common here in Wisconsin for somebody not to have their own vehicle. I've traveled to other places around the country where, like for example, Chicago, you could probably, for the most part, live there and not even have a vehicle. And I know people personally who don't have a vehicle, and they either take the bus or the trolley or bike to work or walk to work because it's such a densely populated area and they have systems for that. But around in Wisconsin, pretty much anywhere you go outside of maybe Milwaukee, I think it'd be really, really hard to get away with not having a vehicle. Even a bigger city like Green Bay or Madison or Eau Claire, I think even those areas, I think you'd really struggle with not having some sort of public transportation. I think either all those bigger cities or medium-sized cities, I would consider like La Crosse or Eau Claire, or even maybe potentially a Madison to be kind of more of a medium-sized city. They for the most part do have public transportation, but they're more spread out. It's less dense, there's less skyscrapers, and I think you probably need a car. So that's an added expense for you, just something to be aware of. Quick mini commercial here, guys. If you are considering moving to Wisconsin, I am actually a realtor out of Eau Claire, Wisconsin. So like this is the thumb, or I'm way up here, so I'm up in the northwest part of Wisconsin, but I've been to every single city: Madison, Milwaukee, Green Bay, way up north by Bayfield, Ashland. I used to live in Ashland, Eau Claire, and I've also spent a lot of time in the rural areas, grew up in a little farm town outside of Eau Claire. If you guys are moving to the area, please reach out to me. I'm a realtor here. The reason why I make these videos is because I don't see enough videos about Wisconsin being produced. And I think it's a really big need for people like yourself. Obviously, if you've made it to this point in the video, this content is valuable for you, and would really appreciate a like, subscribe, or more importantly, call me if you are considering moving to this area. And no matter where you're moving to here in Wisconsin, if I don't work the area, I can link you up with a really good realtor in each area. So with that being said, let's hop into the third reason why you may consider moving to Wisconsin. And that is an inconsistent job market in certain areas of Wisconsin. And let me explain this to you. If you're moving from out of state to this area, you have to understand the structure and reason why the north part of Wisconsin just has a lot more smaller cities. Back in the day, the entire state was agriculture, which it still is. Cheese curds, corn. Wisconsin's very agricultural, and back in the day we'd had trains to go through all these towns, and these little tiny cities were actually booming. They were growing. We had all the different agricultural things that people were growing these little cities for. But back now that farms are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, all these small town farms and all these agricultural communities are kind of turning less agricultural and more city-like, and they're not growing as much. So a lot of these small towns, even the small town of Augusta, where I grew up in outside of Eau Claire, Wisconsin, actually has a place called Bush's Beans. That is primarily where every single person works there. So you kind of have, especially in the more rural areas in Wisconsin, you kind of have more of a ceiling of what you can do for a job. There's not really much moving up or not as many opportunities for you if you wanted to switch companies or change your job or try to work your way up, because a lot of those places like Bush's Beans Factory, which produces the canned beans in Augusta, Wisconsin, they have a set amount of people they can hire. They have a set amount of wages they can pay. Only so high up in the ladder you can go. So, and that's the same thing with a lot of these smaller towns. Is you'll see like one city will be known for being like the paper mill or whatever it might be. Each little city has kind of their own little niche that there might be a factory there that employs like over half of the people. But don't get me wrong, I think if you're considering moving to like Madison, Milwaukee, Eau Claire, Green Bay, all these different kind of job markets there's much more complexity with the communities. So there's pros and cons with it, right? So if you're looking for a more laid back, quieter area, generally speaking, you're going to have a little bit less opportunity, a little less options there. But if you're willing to deal with a little bit of noise, like Eau Claire, for example, it's still a city of only about 70 to 75,000 people, and you can still buy a house 15 minutes outside of Eau Claire that has land and privacy to it, and then drive into Eau Claire. So if you're willing to make that commute, it's a fine place to work. That might be a little bit harder if you're looking at Milwaukee, considering the size of it is million plus. But I would say that would be the third downside about, depending on where you're moving in Wisconsin, would be something that may make you rethink specifically where you're going to move to. So I hope you guys like this video. I'm going to be bringing a lot more content like this to you guys, talking more about Wisconsin. If you guys want to subscribe here, click the subscription below and make sure you give me a like, and make sure to please call me. I have my phone number, my email, and my contact information in the description below, and I will see you guys all later. Peace.